Alright, today is Super Bowl Sunday. A lot of people are watching the game. I hate football. I also understand that a lot of people are making beer. For my birthday this year, I got a brew kit. So today, I'm going to make beer. I would like to emphasize that I have never done this before. So it should be interesting. I have done a lot of reading, even watched all this, that I have never so from everything I've read, the most important thing in beer making is cleanliness, right? So everything that's going to come in contact with the brewed beer, which is called wort, needs to be absolutely positively clean. Because if it has any foreign bacteria in it that can get into the beer, it will fight for control with the yeast and win, and your beer will taste funky. So we're going to clean things first. Take my 7-gallon fermenter, and I made up some sanitizer here with powdered solution that came with my brew kit right here. Basically chlorine, watered down. So first thing we do is pour some of this stuff into the fermenter. And then everything else that's going to come in contact with the beer. This is the tube here for my hydrometer. That goes in there. This is the hydrometer itself. Oop. Almost broke it. That goes in there. The vapor lock and its accompanying little cork. Thermometer, very important. And my big spoon. And the lid, which we're going to pour some sanitizer over before we pour it into the fermenter. Add the rest of the sanitizer in here and let things soak up nice. Right, so that gets set aside to clean. You don't have to worry about sanitizing the little spigot at first, because when we drain the sanitizer out of the bucket, that's when the spigot or the little faucet will clean. So now that that's ready, the next we drain the sanitizer so our next step in the process is to bloom the yeast, right? I'm given to understand that liquid yeast starters are preferred, but dry yeast is just as good, and the kit that I bought came with dry ale yeast. So what is blooming the yeast? Well, basically it's rehydrating it. It's freeze-dried, and you got to bring the yeast back to life, and you do that with warm water. You should boil the water first. Again, cleanliness, very important, so boil the water to get rid of anything, then bring the water temperature back down to between 90 and 80 degrees, and add your yeast. Got my thermometer in here. This has been sanitized with the sanitizer in contact with the water there. And we're just waiting for the temperature to come down to about 90 degrees. It's about 93 right now. So now is probably a good time to introduce my little helper. Right here is my son. He's going to help me out today. He's also known as what?
Killweb on YouTube.
Yeah, there. So Killweb on YouTube, right? Okay, so still waiting for the water to come down. There. So our water has on YouTube gotten down to 90 degrees, exactly where we want it. So my little helper here is going to open up our yeast packet. All right. I'm going to remove this probe here, and all we're going to do here is sprinkle the yeast on the top of the water. Okay. And we're going to let it sit. As Alton would say, just walk away. Alright. So we'll let that sit there. And now we can actually start brewing.
Yep.
Alright. Brewing is a messy process from what I understand. A lot of the videos that I've watched, people get beer all over the place. Boilovers are a big concern when brewing. I am going to do my best to keep things clean. I worked as a cook for many years, so I'm accustomed to cooking and keeping my work area clean, but we'll see what happens. I thought about actually doing this outside, but I didn't want to go get one of those turkey fryers just yet, so we're going to try it inside. Okay, so we've put 2 gallons of water to boil. The recipe called for 1.5, but you ultimately end up with a total volume of 5 gallons of water, and most recipes call for you to, once you've brewed the wort and you put it in your fermenter, to add enough cold water to bring the total volume up to 5 gallons. So I'm going to start with 2 gallons of water. Hopefully the extra water and the size of the pot will really minimize the chance for boil over. We've taken our grains and put them in a steeping bag that we're going to then steep in the now boiling water.
Also,
and just like tea. Go ahead.
This process takes up to 4 weeks before you can even taste the beer.
Right, yeah.
But then you have to store it.
Right. So now we've got our water at a rolling boil. We're going to go ahead and turn off the heat. And since this is a electric stove, I'm actually going to go ahead and remove it from the burner. The other thing I have here is the malt extract. It's kind of syrupy, and so they recommend you heat up the can before to make it easier to get out of the can when you're ready for that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the heat. Take our grain bag here, drop it in.
Be prepared for a long wait.
Yeah, it's going to take about a half an hour for the grain to steep. I'm just getting it soaked in here and letting it sink in there. Okay, so there, we're good to go. Put the lid back on. Set my handy dandy little digital timer here for 30 minutes. And let it steep.
And the camera takes up.
Alright, so 30 minutes. Our grains have been steeping for half an hour.
And it's getting a little messy.
Just a little bit of water here and there.
Water.
So what we're going to do now, I got my sanitized spoon that I rinsed all the water, all the sanitizer off of.
Remember,
and
for all your kids out there, never stick your hand in there. It will burn.
Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is just... Whoops. Just removing the steeping bag. And
which is quite dirty.
Yeah, and letting
the water
kind of drain out here. Once we do this, we're going to bring this liquid now back to a boil. Just letting it run out.
Remember, this is a very hot process.
Right. As we add the next ingredients, once we bring this back to a boil, this is when your chances for a boil over, from what I've read, greatly increase. Reason being, you've now got water loaded with starches and proteins, which are what are needed to form bubbles. So once you start boiling, that's when those bubbles are going to form.
They're going to form
We're hoping that the extra amount of water we used here and the size of our pot is really going to help us avoid a boil over. So, move that away. That you can chuck. You don't need it anymore. So what we're going to do now is move this back onto the burner, turn it up on high, and bring it to a boil. And then we'll add the other parts of the beer.